We are not giving a single penny. We are just giving our credit card.
Good evening, everyone. We'll let folks, I think everyone's joining. So I'll stall for a moment with some opening remarks. So that if there's some people who are still joining, they can settle in. But welcome. My name is Charlie Malone. I'm the Program and Outreach Manager here at the Wick Poetry Center. And I'm really glad that you're here. So hello, teachers, writers, friends of the Wick Poetry Center, friends of poetry, friends of poetry. You know, with that title, Program and Outreach Manager, part of that title means I had the pleasure and challenge of facilitating our course, Teaching Poetry in the Schools. There is really nothing else like this hands-on course at Kent State University. And so I think the best way to talk about it is to hear from the people who have completed it this year. And so I'm so glad you're here to hear those stories. So this year, 10 teaching artists worked in 11 different classrooms. We visited Miller South, Holden Elementary, Walls Elementary, Crestwood High School, from 4th grade all the way up to 12th grade. And we did it all virtually, as you can imagine, which is likely obvious since we're all looking at each other through our screens. But I don't want to talk about the obstacles. That will come up as my students share their stories, certainly, as they share some of these limitations, the frustrations, the barriers of doing this remotely. So instead, maybe I'll let the great Lawrence Ferlinghetti speak to this, the incredible American poet who passed away this February while we were just getting going in this work. In one of his poems, he asks, "What are poets for in such an age? What is the use of poetry? The state of the world calls out for poetry to save it. If you would be a poet, create works capable of answering the challenge of apocalyptic times, even if this meaning sounds apocalyptic. So maybe apocalyptic is a bit too much for such a beautiful spring day. I'm really willing to admit that. But there were probably times during this semester where it felt pretty close. But I think that Ferlinghetti is absolutely correct when he says that the world is calling out for poetry. Our partner teachers, without whom none of this would be possible, wrote to me about how much their young writers needed poetry this year, how especially this year they needed to find a way to make this experience work. And each week when we gathered, these teaching artists would talk about how their young writers like proved this in conversation time and again. And they're going to share a lot of that evidence with you tonight. So that's what you're going to hear. You'll hear what this journey into vulnerability meant for each of our teaching artists. They'll share some of the work of their writers. They'll share some of their own reflections, some of their experiences. And I'm not sure time will allow us to share all of the good work that we've received. We got so many videos from the students who have participated that we're hoping to create a gallery where people can watch those on their own time in addition to the ones that share tonight. So the ones that we're choosing to share tonight just help represent and illustrate some of the experience for us, some of what went on in these wonderful classrooms where we've been happy to be guests. So in the coming days, we'll collect as much of that as we can and make it available. This event will also be live broadcast and recorded so that folks can watch it again in the future. So stay tuned for more information about that. But thank each of you for coming. Thank you to the school administrators who welcomed us, who supported this work, and most importantly to the classroom teachers, Susan, Lori, Marcia, Chris, Tiffany, Benny, Tammy, for working closely with our teaching artists. You know, every year this is such a wonderful win-win exchange. We get the experience of doing this work and you get to welcome us in. And it's such an exciting part of my own professional career. And also thank you to the teaching artists. You're going to meet each of them in turn here shortly. They'll each talk about their experiences. And to begin, I'd like to welcome B. B Parks is the first teaching artist who will share. They taught at Walls Elementary in Miller South. Welcome, B.
Hello, as you may have heard, I'm B. As an early childhood major who hasn't been in a classroom for now over a year, I was super excited to be working in any classroom, but especially in two fourth grade classrooms. And that was what I was most excited about when I learned about this course, was that I would have some opportunity for field experience. So really, I mean, nothing against poetry, but I mostly expected to be in it pretty much primarily for the kids. But as has become the norm recently, my expectations were kind of flipped around. I guess at the beginning, I didn't realize just how much the experience would be impacted by the disconnect that comes with trying to connect digitally, and just how much it would feel that I was missing. I loved interacting with the fourth graders every week, hearing their thoughts and ideas. Fourth graders really have amazing brains. And I loved hearing their excitement. So many of them were so eager to share their poetry. But I also missed the one-on-one connections that you get in a classroom and the overall classroom atmosphere. And it kind of felt like a lot of my energy was focused on logistics and technology and just making things work, instead of really connecting to the students and to the poetry. And I think with the screen, it's hard to connect the poems to the people, even though some of the time I'm seeing their face while they're talking. It's still, I don't know, hard to make that connection. It kind of feels like the computer screens were these thick glass walls that I couldn't quite see through. But despite the struggles, I heard and felt a lot of growth from my students and from myself. And we were able to create some amazing poems. I'm going to share two group poems. They were from the same lesson plan, but different times in the semester. One was the first class that I taught, and one was the last up until this point. I have two more classes to teach, but those don't count because the event is right now. So different times in the semester and different classes. And I think that these really showcase the creativity and the diversity of thinking from these students. So I hope that you appreciate them as much as I do. Now I have to share my screen. Just kidding. I can't screen share, so you'll just have to listen. Okay. So the first is from Miller South.
I'm so sorry.
Oh, that's okay. Okay. Should I? Okay, cool. I can screen share now. Okay, here we go, and present. There we go. Okay, so the first is from Miller South, My Soul by Mrs. Glambo's 4th grade class. My soul is a shooting star in the universe. My soul is like a raindrop from a big gray cloud. My soul is a lovely red heart. When my soul separates when I'm feeling down, it comes back together like 2 peas in a pod. My soul is a strong tree with roots that reach down and anchor me. My soul is my hope and despair. My soul is like cotton candy in water. It melts easily, but is strong and never gives up, like an athlete in a race. My soul is sticky and pink like freshly discarded gum. My soul is a tingle and a wiggle demanding to be felt. My soul is a huge happy birthday surprise waiting for me at the door. My soul is a piece of cheese hidden in my mouth. My soul is something above the clouds, something no one knows about. It drifts through the sand on the beaches. My soul is a happy thing. My soul is as soft as the puppy's fur. My soul is as bright as the sun. My soul is emotional like any emotional animal's. My soul is my emotions, my feelings, my hurt, and my being. It's like a little buddy helping me out. My soul is a wooden chair about to break. My soul is a soft pile of snow. So that was the first poem. This was at the beginning of the semester, and this was my first attempt at creating a group poem using Google Forms, which ended up being one of my favorite things to come out of this. I think that's just, it was created by one of my lovely classmates. And I just think it's such a great way to collaborate digitally. Many things are hard, but I think this one was good, and maybe even something that could be used when we are back in classrooms. Yeah, so the second poem is from Walls Elementary, and this was the last lesson that I taught. So, My Soul by Mrs. Foster's 4th grade class. My soul is feeling very blue. My soul is like a happy dog when he gets adopted. My soul is traveling throughout my body from head to heart. My soul is confusing. My soul doesn't talk. My soul is unknown. My soul is full of happiness, fun, crazy, cool. My soul is a poster hanging on the wall, watching people come and go, not noticing me. My soul is sad and happy at the same time and sleepy. My soul is happy when I get home. My soul is in me. My soul is the blades of grass poking up through the snow. My soul is like a rock, hard and keeps my brain steady. It is hard to crack. My soul is in the heart, some others in the head. Our souls are all different. My soul is like I'm worth nothing, but when I'm with my friends, it feels like I'm worth the world. My soul is amazing, bright, keeps secrets to himself. My soul stands proud, prouder than a knife after a fight. My soul is like a shadow, always with me, it never leaves me, it is me. My soul is big and has a huge personality. My soul makes me break down and fill with emotion sometimes, but then brings me back up and makes me feel warm inside. My soul can have an attitude or a mind of its own. It can play with my feelings to make me feel different things too. My soul is an animal running in the meadow with the grass brushing against his leg. My soul is a paraglider gliding by with the soft rain dripping on. My soul is everything. My soul is friendly sometimes, and sometimes it's heartbreaking. It's friendly when I achieve something or do something kind or amazing. It's heartbreaking when I do something stupid or regret something I did. A soul can be many things, but most of all, it's yours and always will be. So those were two poems that I love. So I can't hear you guys, but snaps for both classes. Yeah, so I don't know, a lot of struggles, but through teaching, learning, and writing, I felt like I rekindled my connection that I had with poetry when I was younger. And I hope that at least some students felt that spark, and that the students that did hold on to it, because I didn't and I regret that. So thank you to the teachers, the classroom teachers, the students, and thank you all for being here and listening. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, B. That was wonderful. It's so cool to get to hear these poems. So yeah, I'm really excited that we get to share this with a broader audience today. So our next teaching artist to share is Hannah LeBrew, who taught at Walls Elementary.
Hello, I'm Hannah, and I taught Walls Elementary. I taught Mrs. Foster's 4th grade class and Mrs. Yale's 4th grade class. So a lot of little children that I don't get to interact with on a regular basis. So it was really refreshing being able to just talk to kids again and, get out of the college mindset. I kind of wanted to start it with prefacing by saying that I am neither an English major nor am I a education major. My major is digital media production, which means I make movies. So I don't get to interact with kids. I don't get to teach anything. And never in my life did I think I would ever want to do those things. So how did I come to this class? I have a minor in creative writing. And this was a class that I kept seeing pop up for a couple semesters, and I kept thinking, no, I'm not going to do that. What would I do with that? And then I think this semester I was like, I'm going to try something new. And I'm so glad that I did, because I was not expecting just the incredible experience that I had from doing this and just taking that step into something that I have no experience or ideas or never saw myself doing. So yeah, it was just, it's unlike any class, I'm sure, as Professor Malone talked about. You don't get to interact with kids. You don't get to interact and teach kids and do all these things that just outside of the classroom and just in our community, which I thought was really, really wonderful. So yes, I did teach 2 4th grade classes back to back on the same day. So I can't imagine how teachers do this all day, every day. But Mrs. Yale was so wonderful. Mrs. Foster was so wonderful. They have just this wonderful energy that they bring, and it reflects in their students as well. They're all so kind and respectful. So one of the things that I wanted to talk about was one of the things that I enjoyed the most from the classes, just from week to week, which was they're not the same. I guess I lump 4th graders all together, thinking they all have they'll respond the same. They do not. I'll teach the same lesson plan one class and then the same thing the next class, and one class really liked it, really was into it, and the other class just had nothing to say, and that's okay. But it was really fun adjusting, seeing what worked, what didn't, what people liked. I think the best part was when we started out, when we would ask them to write something, and we would say, do you want to share with us? And of course, at the beginning, some of them were like, yes, I want to share everything I write. And some of them were like, no, do not read any of my work, please. Which was okay. I wanted them to get comfortable and to know that this is okay. Everybody has wonderful work that they're writing. But it became really rewarding when a student would say, no, I don't want to read my work. And then later on, we would ask again, they go, I would like to read my work now. And it could be the same work, and it could be a different work, could be on a different day, but just knowing that we would come back and they would say, yeah, I want to read it this time. And inside I'm like, oh, I'm so happy because I got to hear your work. And they would submit it to us too. And even if they didn't want it read in class, we still got to look at it. And I would always encourage them, this is really good. You should read it, because I'm sure everybody knows poetry is it's something that needs to be said aloud. You can't enjoy it by looking at it and saying it in your mind. You really have to say it out loud, which is something that a lot of the students, we encourage them to do. Like I said, I'm not someone who had anything to do with education or teaching and with English in general. So I was really nervous at first. I was like, I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know how to approach this. And so I had this mentality of like being anxious of walking into a setting that I'm not familiar with, that I just really have no ideas what's going on. And I remember the first day I was like sweating in my chair, getting ready to present with these kids. And it was so smooth and so wonderful. Even if there was awkward silences, they were just so wonderful. And it reminded me of how great it is to like, not just to talk with kids that are maybe I'm not surrounding myself with all the time, but also just to like hear work of other people and other people being outside of just the college realm of students that are panicked and worried and clusters of anxieties, when you get to just really enjoy these young kids that express themselves. I did a lesson plan recently where we did I am poems, and I had asked them just to fill in the line, I am, I want, I wonder, I tell myself, and I am afraid. And from both classes, I just pulled a few lines, although clustered together, I realized this is kind of a poem in its own. So I wanted to read some of them. I am someone I don't know. I want to see my grandfather one more time. I'm afraid of my parents leaving me. I tell myself I can do it, I can do it. I want to be an artist. I am a passionate dancer. I'm afraid that people won't like me when I grow up. I wonder, why do I have to be sensitive? I'm afraid of being alone, but I'm really afraid of not being alone. I tell myself that it's okay to be different. I want my friends to support me. I am who I'm supposed to be. And I just pulled some of the lines from what they had written. They all wrote such wonderful things. Sometimes they would write something silly. I remember one person wrote for their I am poem, they wrote that they were a nightmare. So they would say, I am your worst nightmare. And it was entertaining because they also enjoy like being fun with it. But sometimes they really did reach down and write some insecurities and things that they were really feeling at that moment. And that's kind of like those bonds and those moments where you're like, I'm glad that I'm here, that I can experience this with you and just get to know your life, which I think is something that poetry does so well. The other, I believe it was on Monday, yesterday, we did a I Have In Me class poem for Mrs. Foster's class. And so I wanted to share just this class poem that we had put together. So here it is. I have in me. I have in me a lost soul. I have in me a bunny. I jump and play all day and eat lots of vegetables. A volcano that will erupt when it gets frustrated. A book that I'm always seeking knowledge from. I have in me kindness, which helps me be a better person. I have in me a bird ready to fly. I have in me a cat ready to scratch all my bad memories. Hope someday I will see my dad. I have in me anger, crawling around, finding nowhere to go. I have in me hope for my life. I have in me a crow that wants to get out and be free. A zebra loving its colorful stripes. I have in me amazing friends that are as good as the whole world. A squirrel, very adventurous and very fast to get away from danger. I have in me a sponge that takes up whatever my friends and families are saying. A pirate that keeps wanting to explore for treasure. I have in me water that flows calmly. The sun, it's all hot and never cold until nighttime. I have in me a mind that never gives up because I won't give up. So that was a poem that we had all pieced together just last minute. We did use Google Forms, which was really wonderful because I could actually look at everything they had written. But yeah, it was such a great experience. I do have one more class that I'm going to be a part of. I won't be teaching it. Unfortunately, my partner will be. She's so wonderful. But from both classes, it was really extraordinary. If we had any bumps, we talked about it. Meeting virtually is not easy, and we had a couple of problems just trying to get links and trying to get into the classroom, which is obviously not the problem if you just show up at the right address. But it was really wonderful. The teachers were so wonderful. If we had a problem, we'd communicate and they say, hey, like, can we make another lesson? They're like, yeah, let's go. let's schedule an impromptu day. So it did not feel like class at all. It was really a joy. And every time I left the classroom, the virtual classroom, I felt good. I felt like I wanted to do it again. And I just feelings that I've never felt. So this is such a wonderful experience. And yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Hannah. That was lovely. The range of those two pieces that you shared, just really incredible. And ending on some of those thoughts about the technology is a perfect segue to talk about Natalia, because Natalia couldn't have taken this course without the digital tools that we have available. And I was really lucky that she's kind of an expert at incorporating digital technology into education. And Natalia is also the first person who I get to play VJ for and show a video. So Natalia, when it's my turn to click play on that, please let me know. But yeah, Natalia is here from, she was one of our teaching artists at Crestwood High School in Miller South. Yeah, Natalia, you ready to go?
Yes, thank you for the lovely introduction. So my name is Natalia, and as Charlie mentioned, I wouldn't be able to take this class because currently, due to traveling restrictions, I'm in Switzerland. I'm from Slovakia and I'm an international student who is hoping to be a high school English teacher in the future. So, but I still wanted to take this class to feel as a part of campus, as staying connected to what I want to do in my life, to having a purpose. And it's been such a wonderful, eye-opening experience on many fronts, in a way of looking at how I want to teach in future, at the humbling experience of learning from kids and stepping, taking a step back and being like, okay, they have a lot to teach me and I need to keep that in my mind as a teacher. But also just getting to experience something like, let's write, taking a step back from what I will do in my life and teach standards and exploring the creativity. And it's been a journey. It's been adjustment for someone who studied to follow the standards and teach them. So I had to readjust and be more creative. And it was really fun. As a student, when I was in high school, I didn't like poetry as much because it seemed like something complex that has one meaning that the teacher is trying to tell you. But later on, I was able to take a really similar class to what we are able to do with kids in my high school. And that was an eye-opening experience because I was able to explore many different types of poetry, from haikus to blackout poetry, from creating sonnets and so many other forms. Which helped me find my own voice and also express my emotions and just share what I feel with world. And I think at that moment in high school, I realized that this is a powerful tool that we need to pass on. As as a future teacher, it's my responsibility to give kids not only to teach them what I'm meant to by the standards or whatever the school will want me to, and I need to take care of them and I need to care about them. But that means that I also have to give them their voice. And teaching this class was wonderful. So I got to experience teaching 7th graders and 11th graders. And both of those experiences were very different, but very, very rewarding because at first, not as many students wanted to share. There is the disconnection we talked about and a couple of my classmates mentioned, because using chats or seeing faces on screens or sometimes just turned off cameras can be hard. Also, kids are afraid to share because they feel like maybe someone will make fun of them. But with time and showing our kids that we care and we want to hear what they have to say, more and more students did open up and share their poems. And when they did, it was wonderful. It was amazing. For me, I was like, wow, these kids are better poets than I am. And I mean, I love poetry and I write it, and I'm not a bad poet. Like, everybody can write, but sometimes I feel like as adults, we overthink what we're trying to say. But these kids don't have the boundaries yet. and it's been a wonderful experience to see this. One of the poems I want to share, and I will read it out loud to you, was a poem from a boy from a 7th grade classroom at Miller South from Skid Zone. And the poem was really simple, but it was really beautiful. So the spiral is a rainbow. It sways and spins in the wind. When it rains, it sheds rainbow tears because it's sad. When it's windy, the spiral is happy. I saw it squirming to get outside. I helped the spiral and it soared through the sky and it said, thank you. And just that simple thank you at the end was such a wonderful way to end the poem, because this student at first didn't want it to share. He was shy about writing, and it was so wonderful that he asked for help a couple of times before, and seeing that we can have that impact. But then also hearing this poem, it was so wonderful, because while it might be simple and you don't get the vivid imagery you sometimes get in poems, sometimes it's about stripping down the words and just having a little conversation. And there's so many layers. You can see his own emotions, but also just something as a simple visual of what he could see outside of the window in his own classroom and connect it to what he was feeling. And that's what poetry is about creating a connection between what we're feeling and what we see around ourselves. And we all can do it. It's about having the space to write. And it's just that wonderful experience of seeing kids discover this space and having multiple lessons to teach them and discover different types of poetry and see maybe what works for them, what doesn't. And as I said, there's been complications with technology, and there was a hard time with not being able to hear kids or having a strange alien-like echo that we couldn't hear anyone, or then they couldn't hear us, so we did taught a lesson through a chat, which was a very interesting lesson. But I will tell you, it might have been my favorite lesson because I was able to see the kids for the first time, even though I was not able to hear them or they couldn't hear me. But what was amazing about that lesson was that I could see their excitement. They were really excited to do this lesson. They were excited to see us, and they were excited to be back in school because they reopened. And I will share one group poem from them. So we did a lesson with Crayola crayons, and they were meant to just pick a crayon they got from their teacher, and they wrote a little line about it, and they wrote wonderful poems on their own. But we also told them to pick one line, and we created a group poem. So I will read it out loud to you. The beautiful color like the ocean, washing back and forth over my skin on a sugar sand beach. Red is the color of your blood streaming down as you took a tumble. Orange like the pumpkins you see in the fall, like the times when you see all the fall oranges as you trick or treat. Bright blue blueberries pop away in my mouth as I breathe the fresh air. Blue like the tall shadows that climb up the brick school wall. Blue like the night with twinkling stars that dot the sky. Berry blue is like a puddle of beautiful water. So soft, so smooth, so perfectly unused. My bright pink crayon, fresh out of box. So many names they could have. Choose, but they only think of carnation pink, a somewhat boring name. A brown that reminds me of the faint scent of coffee in the shops I used to go to when I was young. The metallic orange sky waves by like a blooming flower that stares at me as I walk by. Snowflakes touching the ground, covering it up. Red as a rose, bright as a fire flaming and burning in the wasteful air. Popping purple is like a beautiful butterfly, flying in the berry blue sky. And while this poem might not seem as connected as some of the other poems, it's still beautiful to see the progression of colors and, the repetition you can see of blue. There was a lot of blue. I think there was a lot of blue crayons for some reason. I don't know how. Interesting mix of box. I don't know. But I just love to see how you can take away a little line from their own poem and create another poem. There's so many options of what you can do with what we're doing in the classrooms. And it's been an amazing experience to just be reminded of the creativity we see in the classrooms and we need to nurture. And I hope that I will remember this despite all that sometimes you see an educational system and that it's trying to take away from this creativity, but I hope that I will be able to bring a little bit of it back into my own classroom one day. And to finish up, I would like Charlie to share one more video of a poem from the high school class that was recorded for this. So thank you.
Roots. Digging deeper and deeper, I'm forced to stop at the roots aligned with vines of hatred and forgetfulness, forgetting we all come from the same minuscule seed. Our roots begin to tangle and tear, disappointing my soul and destroying my youth. Keeping my tree from its growth, soon I will allow myself to flourish and remember who I am. I won't destroy my roots, my tree will stand.
Okay, thank you, Natalia. Yeah, sounds like some of the videos will be a little bit quieter, but we'll make them work. Our next teaching artist is Jessica Miller. Jessica taught at Walls Elementary in Miller South. Jessica, you're up.
Hi, everyone. I'm Jessica Miller. Just a little bit about me. I'm a senior in visual communication design. I have minors in photography, creative writing, and user experience design. So from that list, you can tell there's no teaching. And so that was definitely kind of an interesting process of how I ended up here. And also, in addition to kind of all of that, I have a language-based disability. So growing up, I was not a good writer. I was a very poor writer. So if you would have told like me or my parents or my teachers that I would have been teaching poetry how many years later, I don't think anyone would have believed that. But I, of course, coming from, a place where I struggled reading and writing to where I am now, obviously that took some very dedicated, amazing teachers. So of course I knew what it meant to be a good teacher, and I was personally affected by great teachers. And so I knew the weight of what that was. And that was very intimidating to me coming into this class. Like I knew what a good teacher could do and how they could inspire you in writing. And of course, it took a good professor to get me here. I work with Charlie and Brainchild, and that's kind of how I came to this class. Obviously not being a teaching student, it wasn't something that I thought myself capable of doing. But of course, Charlie was amazing. And I was like, any class Charlie's teaching, I want to be a part of it. So that's kind of how I ended up here. And so there was definitely a lot of pressure, like poetry is not always something that I would associate with young kids. I think sometimes they dread that and they don't really find that interesting. So my greatest fear was perhaps making that worse and kind of solidifying that idea in their heads. So that was totally my goal, was to hopefully convince them that this was something worth their time. And so that was something very nerve-wracking going into it. I'm also one of those kids, like many people, who get really jittery before the first day of school. So that was definitely an experience that I had. Worries about technology, of course, plagued all of my peers. But of course, like my fellow teaching assistants I taught with Bea and Hannah, and without their help and support, like I would have been totally lost. I think we all depended on each other to kind of get through the semester. Helping people like me blundering a Google form and having, Bea and Hannah bail me out of those kinds of situations. So we were all kind of in the same boat working together. Same with the teachers. They were so great and so compassionate and helpful and kind of pushing us along and helping us out. No one knows their classes better than teachers. So having their assistance is, a massive thing. Having their support is a massive thing. Allowing us to come in their classrooms is a huge thing. All of the students that I worked with were amazing. They were so patient. Not every activity is every student's favorite. So, giving me the time of day to kind of listen to what I was pitching them and, encouraging to write with, I think it's a reflection on how great the classrooms are and the teachers are and the students themselves are to, allow me to come into their classrooms and to try it out, even though maybe it seemed like something that they weren't necessarily convinced to do yet. So it has been great working with them. My goals for the class too, I wasn't sure, being in college similar to Hannah, I'm surrounded by college age kids my own age most of the day. So I wasn't really sure what to expect with fourth grade, like thinking back to my own fourth grade experience, that was a long time ago. So thinking about who I was and how difficult and challenging I was in fourth grade, I was worried, but all of these fourth graders are so sincere and insightful and funny. They have such profound thoughts that they want to share. And I think that's just been such a great experience getting to work with them. They definitely overwhelmed my expectations and really showed me like not to underestimate anybody. Each of them showed up in their own way and were able to kind of bring what they had to this creative process. So I'm like so thankful for them to give this a shot and kind of listen to me teach these lessons and with Hannah and B and kind of give us a shot, because we were strangers coming into the classroom. I'm going to share a couple poems that I have. So similar to some of Hannah and B's, we did a Have in Me poem at Walls. And so I'll read this one. So it's a similar group poem. So each student contributed a line. So I have in me. I have a plant in me growing tall and big. I have a bird in me that chirps and keeps me calm. I have a detective in me for when me and my friends have a mystery at foot. I have a cherry blossom tree in me so that I can blossom into something faster, stronger, and smarter. I have a creative artist in me, dying to do things 24/7. I have a crow in me that loves the dark and night. I have a window in me to always find the light. I have the whale shark in me that helps me filter through my problems. I have a sponge in me that sucks up all the knowledge in the world. I have a puppy in me for the moments of carefree play. I have paint in me that is colorful in different ways. I have a spider in me that is scary but is scared. I have a hammer and some nails in me for the likes of building things. I have a road in me, never wanting to stop. I have love in me. I have in me all these things to describe me. That is me. So as you can see, these are such really profound statements from these students that they, were open enough to share with us. I was really blown away by their willingness to share, their eagerness to share. Even when we brought model poems in, they would invest their time and would be willing to give voice to these poems, which was incredible because I know being a fourth grader, that wasn't always something that I was willing to do. So to see them step up and be vulnerable with us was just super great. My thing, not coming from a teaching background, was always just wanted to get to know the students and like what they cared about. And so I was always trying to get poems that would allow me to get to know them more. So I had poems about things that they wanted to be and things that they were. And so getting to learn, what their future ambitions were and what their current achievements were was just super great. And of course, we have like these kind of funny prompts where you really just got to see their creativity shine. We did a poem on what happened to your homework, different excuses you would present to a teacher on reasons why you couldn't turn in your homework. And I'll share a couple lines from those because they are just hilarious and so creative. There was one, a chicken grabbed my homework, but then KFC fried him. I was cooking cupcakes and it fell in the batter. I ate the homework cupcakes for lunch and even gave me a paper cut. I couldn't do my homework because a robber took it to the bank. I couldn't do my homework because my entire house burned down and my homework was in there. Yeah, that totally happened. When I was walking home and out of nowhere, 2 ninjas started attacking me and I had to make it into ninja stars. And it just goes on and on. I mean, these students are just incredibly creative. And to be willing to share these with us is just, of course, incredible. There's just, we would bring in these prompts and they would just blow us out of the water with what they returned in kind. And so, of course, like we're to the thank yous. So I don't mean to be repetitive, but of course, like this wouldn't be possible without, the Wick Poetry Center, who of course model excellent professors and excellent leadership. Charlie, who this would not be possible without his support and his connections to the teachers. Of course, this wouldn't be possible without him. The willingness of the teachers to invite us into their space and to teach their students is such a huge thing. It shows trust and it shows patience to allow student teachers to kind of come in. And of course, the students to have the patience with us and to give us a shot. I received, when I was working today, I checked my school email and it was just bogged down with all these emails. And I was like, what is going on? Like, it was like, 60 emails, like that never happens. And each of the students had sent me a PowerPoint presentation thanking me and giving all these like such sweet details. And, one of them was like, you got to tell your professor, you got to pass his class, all these like super cute things. It's just been a wonderful experience and something I totally didn't expect as someone who never considered teaching as a possibility. So thank you to all of you. And of course, my teaching assistants, like my work wouldn't have been possible without your help and your support and my lessons and vice versa, I'm sure. So thank you for that. And I'll pass it on to the next.
Thank you, Jessica. Due to federal educational privacy laws, I can't confirm whether or not you'll pass the course at this moment. But I love, the range of what you shared, the delight of it to the, and also the depth of it. Those two poems really encapsulate a lot of this work. And I'm really excited. So thank you for all of that. But I'm also really excited to turn this over to Haley, because Haley took this course twice after it got interrupted last year. She felt like there was an experience out there that she still wanted more of, and came back to fight the technology fight. And Haley's also going to put me in charge of playing some videos. So everyone, please give Haley Schlegel your attention. She taught at Crestwood High School and at Walls Elementary.
Hi, I'm Haley. Like Charlie said, I took this class last spring semester. Yeah, it was a really great experience. And just like to give you a short, brief introduction to my experience with poetry, I don't think I would be here as competent with my poetry if it wasn't for WIC and this class. Even though it got cut short last spring semester, I really benefited from the short amount of time I had with both fourth graders and high schoolers. And I just really saw myself grow as a poet, and I found that poet in me. Like, I've always loved creative writing, but I never gave poetry a shot. I just kind of dismissed it. As a poem we're going to share later, we called it the boring unit in English class. That's kind of how I saw it. But I really opened up and was willing to share my poetry and actually call myself a poet. And I completely thank the kids for that. And I think going into it this year, even with all the technology barriers and everything, I still feel that way. I feel like I benefited from the kids, and I hope they benefited from me too. So to start, at the beginning of the course, we read some essays from poets and teaching artists. And even last spring semester, there's this one quote from one of them that stuck out to me. And I don't think I quite understood why it did until I just kind of had this teaching experience even through the virtual. So the quote from Atia Harvey is, "Our concerns as adults and as children are not so different. We want to be surprised, transformed, delighted, and understood." So I think through the virtual experience, you get to see a lot, especially with the fourth graders. So with the high schoolers, they were all actually in the classroom. So we got to see them interact with each other a little bit more. But with the fourth graders that I taught, they were all in this virtual format with little cells of just their faces. And it was just really neat seeing little peaks of their personality and classroom quirks, I guess. There was one kid every day would be like, "Oh, I forgot my charger," and have to go running for it. And it was just small things like that that have really stuck out to me and, surprised me, I guess. And I think the fourth graders struggled much more than the 12th graders. The 12th grade class I taught was a poetry elective, so they were all really dedicated and just into the craft, I guess. But the fourth graders, I think a lot of them had never been exposed to poetry before. And I think my first lesson was a little bit harder for them because I talked about symbolism and stuff, and they weren't quite grasping it. And on top of that, the technology and everything, I felt like the first one could have went terribly wrong. But Mrs. Noska is absolutely wonderful. She was really great at directing. Even though I didn't get to see a lot of their poetry, I did get to hear quite a bit of it. They were always willing to share. There's one boy who 5 minutes into the writing was always like, "Can I share now?" But yeah, Mrs. Noska was really great at directing conversation. And even though we didn't see much of their poetry, I think through these conversations, we saw that they were grasping poetry and understanding how to make beauty out of words. For example, there was one day we just spent 10 minutes talking about quality over quantity, I guess, because one kid was like, "It's not worth it if it's not long, it's not a poem." And we just talked about that, took a moment to talk about. And then just small things kind of going off the charter and everything. We were constantly talking about dogs and food in that class. And I feel like that even translated into the high school class. My last lesson, I talked about finding comfort in small things when you're feeling uneasy. And one girl talked about dogs and how she saw a man, a random stranger, washing his dogs and playing with them, and how that brought her joy. And it was just really great to have those conversations. And in a way, I feel like those are poetry. I wanted to share a group poem that my fourth graders wrote together. It's a really simple, sweet poem about the color yellow, but I feel like it really like encapsulates the joy and like little things that they would always talk about. And I feel like you really get a sense of their personalities and the conversation we had while creating this poem. Like this poem took like the entire lesson because we were just having conversations in between each line about everything we were putting into it. So it's called Dandelion Yellow. Dandelion is like lemons in summer, dandelions beaming off the sun. Dandelions make me feel like I'm at an Indians game, eating a hot dog with mustard on it. Dandelions are like eating yellow cake with vanilla frosting. It reminds me of deviled eggs and honeycombs. The sunny weather makes me feel warm and safe, like I'm eating potato chips right when Lindor gets safe. Makes me feel like lemonade drinking in the bright sun. So yeah, and I love the part about the Indians game, and I feel like we talked about this with the high school students as well. But going back to the quote, just like we all have those needs, we all have these wants, and even though like we never directly addressed like the pandemic or anything, I don't think we would have had these conversations if it wasn't for it, because they were like you could just see that longing for things like baseball games and hot dogs. And one girl at our last lesson, we were talking about summer, and she said, I'm excited for cheerleading if it starts up again. And that just like broke my heart. But it's just like those small moments. And so the high schoolers, they were always so dedicated, and the amount of time we had with them was really short. It was like 45 minutes, but they were always, they had to clean up like 5 minutes before. So any time we had for sharing was like blown out the window. So I barely got to hear them read their poems, like maybe one student a day. But I was really surprised by how many of them were willing to record themselves and send in the videos for you guys. And just watching those videos made me so proud of them, and know that me and Will, my teaching partner, had like such a good impact on them. So Charlie, if you would like to share those.
Hi, I'm Sophie Martin. I go to Crestwood High School, and I will be reading one of my poems. Someone with no belongings takes a walk down the road every day, yet goes unnoticed, leaving traces of themselves within their tastes, surrounding themselves with others who can see their only true belongings, filling to take. That someone keeps walking down the same road trying to discover a different ending, even though they know they will not get anywhere. Thank you.
Haley, which one did you want to do next?
I forget what it was called. No, it was the one about making the bed, by Alexis Wilson, I believe.
Hi, my name is Alexis Wilson, and I go to Crestwood High School. This is Making the Bed. Meters of white and silk and comfort slide across my hands, though my hands are not the first. A web far too complex for me to understand, crafted this and that, everything really, all for me to struggle here, cutting corners, smoothing edges, rejoicing in the feeling of fresh warmth beneath my fingertips. In a room that has seen me grow every day, falling into sheets like these, insignificant to anyone else, but important to me.
Yeah, so thank you for sharing those, Charlie. And to end, I guess I just want to thank you all for being here and listening to those poems. And then Mrs. Noska and Mrs. Spencer, I'm not sure if you guys are here, but you guys have really inspired me a lot, and I love the way that you guys interact with kids. So we can go on to whoever's next.
Thank you, Haley. Yeah, and there are several more videos, and we're going to work to get those shared shortly. Yeah, wonderful. Yeah, it's so cool to hear it in their voices. Yeah, really just it's neat that they took the time to do that and to share those with us. So next up is Will. Will's already been praised by his teaching partner. Will taught at Miller South Elementary and at Crestwood High School. Will, you're up.
All right. Hello, everyone. Like Charlie said, my name is Will. I am a senior English literature major here at Kent State. I took this class because I've gone a couple of years taking poetry classes and have really fallen in love with the art. And, the opportunity of teaching that to younger students seemed unpassable. So I had to take the class. And just to start off, I'd like to thank Charlie and my fellow students for making Tuesday night one of my favorite nights this semester. In a year that it was really easy to fall back behind a computer screen and kind of just zone out classes. It was really refreshing to have a class that required you to be forward, and that was a requirement built out of common friendship and just common love for something that we were all working towards. And that was just an awesome thing in the midst of a pandemic that really just made school very boring. So we all had the awesome pleasure of teaching at these schools, and I'd also like to thank all those teachers and all the schools for being very helpful and awesome. The kids were just so perceptive, and they loved hearing from us, and it just seemed like everything that we said just really resonated with them. And if I had to describe this class in one statement, I would say it's an attack on misconceptions. And I think that, when we think of poetry, it's easy to think of some guy sitting under a tree with a pad in his lap and birds chirping and words just flowing from him like a river, and just this beautiful thing rising from it. And like, I just think this course just totally destroyed that. And it was beautiful because it should. And, poetry isn't just meant for the naturally gifted or the wordsmiths like Shakespeare and Shelley and Wordsworth, but I mean, it's meant for everyone. And, it's a craft and something that needs to be refined, but, it's deep enough for an elephant to drown in, but shallow enough for a child to play in. And so I've just had an awesome time teaching these kids and just trying to impart any type of, skills that might make their journey into this art smoother, or, even introduce them to this awesome thing of poetry, and to be able to, create art literary with words, and, really try to, I think this was all of our goals, was to, try to provoke emotional expression. And, it's so important for young kids to, have that opportunity to, and not just young kids, I think everyone needs a time for emotional expression. And just that ability and that time to have with the page on your desk can be so valuable. And just introducing that to people is just an awesome opportunity. So I taught, I was lucky to teach at 3 different grade levels. So I taught the 4th grade class, the middle school class, and then I also taught high school class. And that was a terrific opportunity and awesome variety. I think getting to see the difference between the different ages, and the way that, our instruction went with those different classes was really interesting. Oftentimes I saw that the younger kids were more likely to, speak up and just kind of shout out things, which was awesome. I mean, it's great to have just, like Natalia said, they haven't built those boundaries yet that we, as being older, have, built in front of us. So it's fun to listen to them just have their thoughts flown out. And then in high school, of course, you see, it's much clearer that this is, a passion that is being built instead of just a foundation. These kids are building upon that foundation, really striving to make this a passion that they will pursue. So that is just wonderful to see. And for today, I'll be sharing a poem from a middle schooler and a poem from a high schooler. And I'll just go ahead and read those from my screen. The first one is from, let me see. The first one is from a girl named Eden from Miller South Middle School. And this was actually done during one of my teaching partner's lesson. And we were using a model poem of if my life were a movie. And the kids were exploring this idea of, if our lives became this 2-hour thing that we could, well, she decided to make it a book, which is awesome. And, if your life was able to be consumed in one day, like what would it look like? What would be included in that? So this is what Eden wrote. If my life was a book, I'd read every line over and over till the end of time. If my life were a book, I'd travel everywhere. I'd time travel to the dinosaur age. I'd travel to the coastline, waves crashing full force. I'd travel to outer space, count all the stars. If my life were a book, I'd do what I want. I'd swim the whole ocean. I'd defy gravity, learn to fly. I'd splash the whole world with a little color and fill all the blank spaces. If my life were a book, I'd turn every page. I'd read and read through the sunny days. If my life was a book, I'd read with suspense, my shoulders tight. I'd be up and reading all through the night. That's just so good, and that's just an example of how, these students are constantly surprising us. And, that one of the things that I love about this poem is that me being a college student that has studied this for, much longer than this middle school student. And she is just throwing rhymes out there and I can't do that to save my life. So it's so interesting to see the variety and the accessibility of poetry, and it's an awesome thing. So next I will move to the high school student. And this is an untitled poem from Bethany Mason from Crestwood High School. And this came from a lesson in which we're talking about, certain apprehensions that we might have, because most of these students were seniors, some apprehensions that they might have had moving into the next stage of life and moving into college. And this was an awesome lesson. It was great for both me and Haley because we got to, resonate with the students because we're at this similar stage in life that we are, moving from school and moving into our careers, and, they're making this next step too. So it offered, great conversation and really great work as well. So like I said, this poem is untitled, and this is how it starts. Unusually, the comforts of childhood no longer feel the same as an adult. Being alone is not a luxury anymore. It is the norm. And a lonely one, the dog you used to love and cling to, he lives with your parents now, and they're 50 miles away. At least a trip can always be made to journey for comfort, but don't forget, you have the strength to make it anew. And I just love that poem and the journey, like she mentions a journey in it. And I mean, that's what we're all going through here. And, she did a great job of, making anew in this new life, in this new step that she's taking. So those are the poems I had to share. I appreciate you all for listening to that. And, And again, I appreciate this opportunity and all you guys. It's been a great year and a wonderful opportunity to share the art with all these kids. Thank you.
Thank you, Will. Thank you. For those of you who haven't gathered, this is a special group. The way they got through this year together and the way they supported each other is probably becoming very clear to anyone who's paying attention to the chat for the presentation. You know, there was a real, even remotely, there was a real chemistry between these students and a lot of strength, which reminds me that there's one more person that we need to thank here today, and that's Brooke. Brooke Wires is in the course last year and was an intern with the Wick Poetry Center this semester. And when we had another student for whom life came up, some really significant personal obstacles made it so that this student had to drop the course after we were all sort of rolling. Brooke stepped in without missing a beat and, you know, partnered with some of these teaching artists and made my life a lot easier. So I wanted to thank Brooke really quickly. I won't make you share or put you on the spot, but I did want to express that gratitude before I forgot, as I'm sure your teaching partners would feel too. So next up is Natalie Dieters. Natalie taught at Holden, and Natalie is someone who, you know, in the chemistry of this class, I came to really enjoy her energy and spirit, personality. So without me babbling anymore, Natalie, you're up.
Hi guys, I hope you can hear me. Like I said, my name is Natalie and I wanted to start off by reading a group poem. So I only had one placement and this was with a poetry club at Holden Elementary, and they were all fantastic writers, and they wrote this poem together called 100% Writers Club. And it starts, I am 16% black flare pen, 50% black backstroke. I am 0% Skittles, 40% sporty, only 4% bad jokes. I am 50% French, I'm 51% science fiction reader, and 10% Italian. I am 12% smile, even with a mask. 50% art, music, and kind, 61% at soccer. I am 40% sports of all kinds, and 11% the smell of freshly baked cupcakes. I am 4% an aspiring poet, 8% maple leaf, 10% a mechanic, 11% science, 20% Harry Potter, 7,000% basketball, 100% a person. We are 100% us, and we hope that you see the best of us. It's a group poem where like each student wrote one line, and it really just tells you how amazing some of these writers were. And I chose a group poem because it's actually really hard to just pick out one or two voices from all the students, because I cannot stress enough how amazing this group of kids have been in their writing this year. Like the whole club was amazing writers who made my week every time I saw them. And I personally am a middle childhood education major, so I'll be teaching actually next semester in a 4th grade English classroom. I'm beyond excited. And unlike a lot of my peers in this major didn't get to do field experiences, but I got to be here teaching poetry in a 4th grade classroom. And I can't thank this class enough for the opportunity that was, because I'm leaving with dozens of lesson plans I can't wait to have in my classroom. And for those reasons and more, I want to thank Charlie and my mentor teacher, Miss Lewis, my teaching partner, Gabriella, and all the writers in the Writers Club, because they did amazing. And I want to share one more poem, because I think it's good parting words. This is from one student named Sophia G, and she wrote Ode to a Seed. She wrote, seed, your layers of cardboard remind me of bark, and the weed inside you will sprout up like a tadpole's eyes. The bud will appear along with some leaves, like when we tie a knot. A flower appeared and pushed its way out of its bud, just like when we squirt ketchup out of a packet. Your flower will not last long, and after a bit, it crumples and falls, just like when we crumple up paper and throw it in the trash. Your leaves will turn brown and be camouflaged like a chameleon. Then next year, your little green crystal will pop out of the dirt, and soon we will see a flower. Snaps all around for her. She did fantastic.
Oh, thank you, Natalie. Those are so good. Such good examples. Oh, so keeping on schedule, Kaylee Brooks is our next teaching artist. Kaylee taught at Miller South in Crestwood. And Kaylee, when it's time to share Kate's video, let me know.
Okay. So I'm Kaylee. I originally took this course because it combined two of my favorite things, which is writing poetry in specific and teaching. I'm an early childhood education major, so it was really funny that I got put into a middle school and high school classroom. I felt kind of out of my element. That being said, I wasn't extremely disappointed after the first few weeks being in these classrooms, especially because I'm just so grateful to have been in any classroom this semester. When I signed up for this class, I wasn't sure what to expect with COVID, and I do wish I could have experienced this like pre-COVID, but I'm so glad for the experience. While I can't say that I haven't been stressed about teaching these lessons or that I haven't felt any sort of anxiety because of talking to a screen and already bad enough with in-person social cues, this was still an enjoyable experience, except I don't know how often you guys are around high schoolers, but mine didn't seem to talk very much and the awkward silence was really painful sometimes. Alongside my teaching partners, I've taught lessons that were more fun. We did one with the card game, Cards Against Humanity. We did another one that was more serious, like what we'll miss when we can no longer enjoy those things. I've seen students become excited about what they're writing about or enjoy what they're writing, as well as students shift their views. I had one student in particular in one of my high school classes that said he like absolutely hated poetry and that wasn't something he ever enjoyed or wanted to do. But he was one of the first people to share his poems during one of my lessons, which combined poetry with our favorite songs, and he responded really positively to that poetry experience. And then I wanted to share a couple poems from both the 7th grade and the two different 11th grade classes I taught in. So for the first poem, this is from one of the 7th graders. It's from a similar prompt that Will was talking about earlier with like the life as a movie. It was written by Sydney. If I were in space, I would be floating like ice and water, the feeling you get when your heart drops on a roller coaster. I feel weightless like a balloon floating in the sky. It's silent like you're in a whole different world. You can see a beautiful set of Milky Way stretching along the elegant sky. You can taste the air like tasting helium. And then this is another poetry or another poem from the same prompt by another 7th grader named Melody. If my life were a movie, there would be no title because I, the main character, am a stranger. It would be hard to title a movie when you don't know what you're watching, like me in math class, or like shattered glass all scattered out, not knowing where you are. A mystery like Criminal Minds, but it will never be solved. My movie will run on forever because my life will never end forever and ever. Like a song on repeat, even without a title, there would be a beautiful melody. Some of the best things are unknown, like a star waiting to find its light. And then one poem from a high school student I had named Jackson. This one doesn't have a title. I couldn't live without music, the feeling in your heart when a note is struck, with a melody in your head that gets stuck, the power of amps, all the more powerful lyrics behind them, leaving a lasting impression for years to come. And then I wanted to include one of the Cards Against Humanity poems that I received. The prompt was, what would grandma find disturbing but oddly charming? It goes, grandmas always seem to be the most loving people on earth, no matter what time it is. I'm always welcome at grandma's, no matter what identify your personality with. Grandma still accepts me. My mom hates that new piercing I got. Who cares? I'm sure grandma will love it. But then all of a sudden, grandma stops inviting me over for dinner. Grandma stops calling me to check in. It's been like this ever since I got her that seemingly perfect Christmas gift. How was I supposed to know she didn't want her face tattooed on my butt? Which I wanted to include that because sometimes poetry can be more fun and you can have a little bit of like creativity with it in that way instead of having like more serious poems. And then another poem I wanted to share was also from another high school student named Grace. It's called Falling Without You. I'm in my bed, replaying the day, worried about what I said, regretting what I didn't. It was probably my fault, but you will barely talk. I'm falling alone, not even wanting myself there. You said you cared, but you're not here. You're too consumed by a boy and his words when he's near. I'm in my bed, thinking I'm someone you won't talk about. Your world revolves around him. It pushes me down. You know my head, but don't remember what I said. Replaying our conversations, wondering why I'm falling, and you're flying. And then Charlie, if you wouldn't mind playing the video.
You, drinking your morning cup of coffee. You, sitting on the back patio enjoying the beautiful sunrise with a book in hand. You, feeding Miss P every morning and soaking up the happiness she brings you. You, with joy in your soul, you are who I love. You, watering the flowers so that it may flourish and grow. You, checking in on your grandkids, missing not one detail to what is going on in our lives. You, writing down every thought that comes to mind so that nothing is forgotten. You, with a heart of gold, you are who I love. You, persevering through every obstacle life throws your way. You, singing your silly made-up songs. You, never letting a minute with your family go to waste. You, my special Graham, you are who I love.
And then that was from Kate in one of my high school classes. So I just wanted to end by saying that I'm really thankful for being able to teach despite everything going on in the world and all of the technological obstacles that I faced throughout the semester. I started a little late with the high schoolers because of some like miscommunication and ended a little early with my middle schoolers because of their schedule. It was really great. They were a really great group of kids and their writing was really awesome to read, and they grew so much in their skills just within the first like couple weeks of us being together. And I'm really grateful to Chris and Marcia for being so great and supportive of us being in their classrooms.
Thanks, Kaylee. I love that Cards Against Humanity prompt because there were times this semester where we all just needed a laugh, right? Like, you know, there were days where we needed to delve into our experiences and make meaning out of them. But there were some days where we just needed to play and laugh. And I was glad to see you all do that. Our next teaching artist is Maddie Hamill, who is at Crestwood High School in Miller South. Maddie, you're up.
Hello, everyone. My name is Maddie. I'm a third year integrated language arts student at Kent State. So this class was something that was really exciting for me, something that I was really looking forward to because it's kind of what I'm going to be doing for the rest of my life. I'm going to be a high school English teacher when I graduate next year. So this is something I was really excited about. And naturally, this was not the experience I was expecting with everything being online. It was definitely a little bit disappointing, but I still had a really great experience. But I'll be completely honest, there were some times this semester where it felt like everything was just going wrong. There was tech problems, communication issues, like scheduling conflicts, not being able to see or hear my students, sometimes both at the same time, which was fun to deal with. It was definitely frustrating. And it, yeah, like I said, it just felt like a lot of things were all going wrong at the same time a lot of the time. But there were also a lot of times over the course of this semester where I felt like everything kind of just fell into place and everything was going right. So I would like to share one of those moments with you to start out. So I asked a group of my fourth grade students to write a poem about all the things that they want to do in their lives and experience and all the things that they're excited about. This is actually a lesson plan that I stole from Kaylee, so credit to her for that. But I had them write these poems and then submit their favorite lines in a Google form, like a lot of other people said that they did. And I thought this poem turned out so cool, especially because I didn't move anything around. I didn't change any lines. I didn't talk to people about like a theme beforehand. I just let the responses come in and then copied them into a poem exactly in the order that they came. So I think you'll see what I mean when I say that everything just kind of went right in this moment. So this is the poem that they created. Sleep by the window and cuddle with my favorite blanket as the sun comes up from the dark blue sky. Not enough time to paint more galaxies. My life scrambled before my eyes. I want to let words seep into my skin until I'm covered in memories, while the moonlight sky guides me home. I have not yet seen the words between the lines. Sometimes I stop for a second and see how fast time flies by, and I think to myself for a second, am I wasting this one-time opportunity? Pick out a couple flowers while I'm there, take a sniff in the wonderful air, and seal it with a kiss, like the sun bouncing off my skin. Take a breath and breathe in the world, take in all you take for granted, fill your soul with all there is. As I get closer to the end, I want to run and shout while the last piece of sand trickles out. I still miss the tickle of the wind on my skin. I have not seen that smile I used to have that is hidden under my mask. The things that are hidden are like shadows of my past.
I haven't been outside in a while to smell the fresh air, but it seems so unfair. I keep myself alone in these walls in a place that I call home. So I loved the way this poem came out. It was actually the last poem that we wrote in the last class that I had with these students. So I just really think they got it, and it was just a really special moment. So I wanted to share that with you. But that definitely wasn't the only success that I had this semester. I watched my students that came into class the first day saying that they absolutely hated poetry and that they were bad at it and would never be able to write a poem, turn into the ones that raised their hands to share their poems in front of the whole class, which is so hard to do in middle school when I feel like so many kids are afraid of being judged, and they put themselves out there, which was just amazing. And I watched a group of 11th graders go from laughing through our first class and like joking with their friends and generally avoiding anything too meaningful, as I definitely expected 11th graders to do. And a few short weeks later, I saw them making a poem made up of their secrets and sharing that with each other, which was just like insane. Like I would have never done that in high school. So I'm so proud of them for that. So I have a few more poems that I want to share with you today. I just thought that was the best use of my time to show you what my students have done. So this first one is from a 7th grader who told me that he could not write poetry. So this is an ode that he wrote. Oh dear history, you echo through the ages, people knowing your lessons but never truly learning them, as it repeats itself in an endless cycle yet imperfectly, radiating from creation an endless song of sorrow and glory, never truly ending, never truly finished. So as you can see, he can obviously write poetry, which it was just really great to see like the confidence come out of him so that he could write that. And then I have another group poem, this time from my 11th graders. Like I said, we wrote a poem based on everyone's secrets. So I had them anonymously submit a line with a secret so that none of them actually knew which student shared each line, but here it is. They titled it Yin and Yang. So I used sugar instead of Splenda in her coffee, but I never told anybody. I hit Aiden's car, but I never told anybody. I lied to her, but I never told anybody. It hurt me when I didn't get to say goodbye, but I never told anybody. I'm nervous about moving out, but I never tell anyone. I took one too many pills, but I never told anybody. You lied, but I never told anybody. I used to be dirt broke, but I never told anyone. I have had boys try to bring me down negatively and make me think I was not good enough, but I never told anyone, who I just could not trust both as a friend and a person. I saw something strange, but I never told anybody. I don't care for the light, but I never told anybody. So I thought that poem also just turned out really great. So I wanted to share it. And I have just a few more poems from the 11th grade class that I want to share because this is a class that kind of didn't want to share a lot of the time, which is totally fine because poetry is a really vulnerable thing. But I did have 3 students that asked for their poems to be shared. And I think that's a really big deal that they wanted this shared with you. So I definitely wanted to include one from each of them. So this first one is one from the Cards Against Humanity lesson that Kaylee was talking about. Our poems kind of overlap a little bit because we did teach together, but these are different poems. But this one was from a student named Miranda. It's called That's Right, I Killed My Depression. So that's right, I killed my depression. How, you might ask? I fought every day in, day out, hurting and crying, becoming stronger and stronger, scratching and clawing to find happiness again. So yes, I killed my depression. This next one is by a student named Jackson. I haven't learned enough, the desire to master an art, become the scholar I envisioned, but I still feel unworthy of this knowledge. The people I look up to, do they feel the same? And this last poem is by Hannah, and she wrote it about one of her prized possessions, and it's entitled Stuffed Bunny. When you're far away from me and your energy slowly fades, I grasp the soft pink bunny and try to bring you back. I feel its soft, fluffy ears and shiny little feet, and I picture you next to me like it should be. So I think all of these poems were just amazing, and I hope that this kind of gave you a little bit of a glimpse into what I saw from my students over the course of the semester. There were so many more amazing ones, but obviously I can't share all of them. So this definitely wasn't the experience that I was imagining, but I'm still so thankful for all of the time that I did get to spend with these students. So I just wanted to end my time today by saying a thank you to my students. I don't know if any of you are here or might be watching this later, but
If you are, I am so proud of all the writing that you have shared with me this semester, and I'm so grateful that you trusted me with your words. It was all amazing, and I'm so proud of you for all the writing that you may not have shared with me because it was too personal or you didn't think it was good enough. I promise that it was, and I would love to hear it one day when you're ready. But yeah, thank you for everything, and thank you.
Oh, Maddie, those were so good. Those were so good. Thank you for those. Yeah, last but certainly not least is Gabriella Klingman. They were one of our teaching artists at Crestwood and at Holden. Gabriella's energy in the course was just something special, the just genuine curiosity you bring to it. So yeah, I'm excited to hear what you have to share, and then I'm going to put you all on the spot one last time. All right, Gabriella, it's all you.
Hi, I'm Gabriella. I am an English and Spanish double major, and it's my goal to teach English as a foreign language. So I kind of took this course so that I would get some teaching experience, but I really took this course because I personally know that poetry is such a powerful tool for self-expression. I had the privilege of working with a class of 4th and 5th graders and with two different classes of 11th graders. When I was in 4th grade and when I was in 11th grade, I often felt small in my real life, but when I would write poetry, I felt huge, I felt big. And I really wanted to give these students that tool to be able to express themselves, to be able to define their world on their terms and figure out what their voice is. So I have to thank all of the students in my class for being vulnerable with me, because I know that's a very hard thing to explore. It's hard to find out what your voice is. And I also have to thank all of the teachers that I worked with, Susan and Chris, thank you so much, and for my teaching partners. I think what I loved most about this experience was being able to create prompts that made students think about their role in the world and what they could do to change it. I'm just going to share 3 of my favorite prompts. I made one. I challenged students to think about what they would change about the world and what revolutions they would like to see. I had them do another prompt about praising their disappointments in their life. What did they learn from them? And finally, I used another prompt where I encouraged them to give themselves permission to exist in the world and to accept themselves for who they are. So again, I have to thank the students for being vulnerable with me. So I think the best use of my time is to share these students' poems with you. So without any further ado, Charlie, could you put on Birdman by Maggie Hahn?
I'm Maggie Hahn and I'm from Crestwood High School and I will be reading my poem, Birdman. Day 1, I wear a black shirt with black ripped jeans, the choker on my neck slightly tugging. Day 2, I wear a flower-covered dress, my hair pinned up like a girl on the prairie. Clothes are easy to change but hard to pick. It's so liberating when designing your own masterpiece, especially when one is so extravagant. Outfits are like the sky and I am the bird, free to explore the clouds during the day and gaze at the stars that are so close at night. Yet after the day is done and my energy has depleted, I lay the bird to rest and dream about the sky again. Thank you.
Yeah, and Maggie had written that poem in response to a prompt about giving yourself permission to exist in the world. And that was just a beautiful response. The second poem I would like to share with you is also from an 11th grader. It's from a different class though. I challenge these guys to praise the disappointments in their life. So this is Praise the Time by Grace Schweikert. Praise the tears that made me see that sometimes it's not all about me. Praise the words my mom spoke to me about spending time with grandma before she couldn't breathe. Praise the life that was given to me to show now that it all won't last forever. Praise the rides to grandma's to eat our meals, even when I would complain. Praise the time I was given to make the memories with the one I loved. Praise the memories that are stuck in my brain, even the ones that lead to regret. Praise the love that grandma shared, even when I didn't show I cared. Praise the regrets I now hold to remind myself that the clock continues to go. Praise the people who held me near, reminding me of the special times with my grandma when she was here. It was just a beautiful response to this prompt. And then I have another response from the same class. This is Disappointment Appreciation Poem by Dalton Cochran. Praise the disappointments in life. Love the unplanned. Thank the world for the snow, even though it's inconvenient. We have to start slowing down and start praising what's not expected. While the outside may be bitter, at least we're still alive to feel the cold. Even though it's ugly outside in the present, the snowless future lives on, ready, waiting to be praised. I love the thought of reframing the disappointments and figuring out how these disappointments can teach you things about your life. And this kind of leads to a segue to my next poem, because these guys, these 11th graders, were a little bit hard to work with at first, I would say, because they were often silent, or they just kind of made jokes in the chat instead of like focusing on the prompt. And sometimes I tend to be too serious for my own good. So these guys really taught me that humor has a role in education, and that if you joke with students and like get on their level, you can really like help them like have a good, meaningful experience, and you can really get to know them better. So with that idea of humor, here is a poem from one of the 4th graders I worked with called Ode to a Lego by Stella M. Lego, you hurt my bruised foot, peeling my skin. You really hurt my foot when I step on you. That 4x2 Lego brick. Oh man, you hurt, you 4x2 Lego brick. The stinging yellow bee Lego brick. That terrible 4x2 Lego brick. And I think it's important to add that there are 3 exclamation points at the end of that poem. But I just love that, because like so often I feel like we get told that poetry can't be funny. And like these 4th graders just rebelled against that idea. They had awesome lines. It was just lovely working with them. And that leads me to the last poem I'm going to share with you guys tonight. It is also by a 4th grader, and it is also written in response to the giving yourself permission to accept yourself, to forgive yourself prompt. This is Untitled by Sophia G. I'm mostly good, but when I'm not, a knot forms in my belly, and it feels like moths are eating it, piece by piece until it's gone. And when I think I won't get caught, they catch me with their hands, and it feels like they're crushing me until I'm just a puddle of rainbows. Whatever the case, they will forgive you. The world will forgive you. I will forgive you. Thank you.
Thank you, Gabriella. All right, so we're going to have the whole group turn your cameras on, turn your mics on, and we're going to do a group reading of a poem that we wrote together on our last day of class. We're reflecting on all these ideas about what poetry is. One of the essays we read is called Poetry is an Egg with a Horse Inside. And I love how strange that image is. And so we did some automatic writing, and we wrote a bunch of different lines, and then we spun them into a version of a villanelle just to play with form a little bit. And so there'll be some repetition in it. But nod politely, everyone, if you can see your, you have the poem up and you can see it. All right, so unmute yourselves so that the reason I'm asking for that is because then it will make you all like centered on the screen for everybody else, which will be great. But this is a poem we all wrote together called Poetry Is.
Poetry is a collection of words on paper.
It is a boring unit in English class.
Poetry is clutching birds in the hearts of strangers.
I can read B's line. Oh, B, you're here. Good, good.
So sorry. Okay, I'm here. Poetry is playing hide and seek with your soul.
The flow that never stops, the erosion that never yields.
Poetry is a collection of words on paper.
Poetry is the hellos and goodbyes and every word in between.
It's holding each word throbbing like the heart of a stranger turned family.
Poetry is clutching birds in the hearts of strangers.
Poetry is how a seed turns into tomatoes.
It is a plastic bag of words caught in an oak tree.
Poetry is a collection of words on paper.
Poetry is the ocean crashing glass till the edge is round enough to be held.
Poetry is hiding in a turtle's shell on top of a landmine.
Poetry is clutching birds in hearts of strangers.
All is folly, and Shakespeare rests on the side of the road.
Poetry eats Culver's ice cream with a blue spork.
Poetry is clutching birds in the hearts of strangers.
Poetry is a collection of words on paper.
All right. Thank you all. And that will be our last Tuesday night together and our conclusion. So everyone who can, I know the frowns, I see that B. This won't be the end. I'll still have some stuff to share with you. I'm looking forward, I won't bore everyone else with our class details, but I'm looking forward to the last couple of steps. We'll all be in touch. For those of you who came and listened to these wonderful poems, thank you. And this is one of those nights where I can't believe this is my job. So thank you all again. I've told you all how much I couldn't have gotten through this particular semester without with another group. You've been very special. So we'll be in touch soon. Have lovely evenings. Take care. Bye, everyone.